I'm always looking to try something new, and today I'm going to put it to a spin. I got some great details out of this piece, and I think a lot of it had to do with the ability of how I could move my canvas. Stay tuned. Hello everybody, welcome back to Moonkusser Art. I'm Janet and I am going to be starting a project today. First time I'm trying it. I'm going to be using the Epoxy Resin Store's Super Gloss Clear Epoxy, and I have a paper cup without any wax on the inside of it. And I've got a couple colors over here. This is going to be done in a couple of layers, so we'll see how this goes. I have FlowArt resin. This is also from the Epoxy Resin Store. I've got their red, I've got their purple, and I have Pearl-X Reflex Violet. And I also have some Art Tree Creations. It's their H2O line. The color is Stormy Night. So I'm going to be starting with those. Here they are laid out on the tabletop. You can't even read that on there in the light. I have spray painted this convex canvas with Rustoleum spray paint. I use the, it's a paint and primer together. And you can see it's a gloss color. It's got a sheen to it. So we'll be checking that out. Now, this is where I'm getting into the tricky stuff. So, I went shopping with my friend Sean. She is a sculptor, and I love her work. She's fantastic. If you follow me on Instagram, find her, follow her. She's wonderful. She does some really nice creations. Anyway, we went shopping at one of her stores where she gets her products for doing her sculptures, and I wanted to go with her because I wanted to get this thing. This is a pedestal. There's another name for it. I'll put it in the description box. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Maybe I'll even put a label up here when I have my aha moment. Anyway, it's got a beautiful turn to it, nice and smooth. So I like that. I propped it up on my favorite pedestals. My lifts are my yogurt cups. So you know that about me. And this is a convex canvas. Now, I bought these a long time ago. And when I started out, before I started out doing resin, I was doing a lot of acrylic pours, FlowArt, and these were very nice for that. But then I quickly transitioned over to resin. So this is going to be a little tricky. I have supported the inside of the canvas with a cardboard cutout. It fits snugly in there, and that's going to keep it. If I didn't have that in there and I had my canvas sitting on top of this, you would see the line of the edge through the canvas, and I don't want that. So we put that cardboard in there. It's just loose fitting. I didn't tape it in place or anything like that because I'm not concerned about that. And now I can spin this canvas. So maybe you see where I'm going with this one. We're gonna give it a try, guys, and let's get started. Okay, so again, I'm using the Epoxy Resin Stores. This is their Super Gloss resin, and I'm using this one because, again, I'm working on this convex canvas, so it has a rounded edge. When you're working on a rounded edge, you need to have a thick resin. If your resin is on the thin side, then what will happen is as it goes over that rounded edge, it will have even more of a pull, and it will go very thin on your edges. So a thick resin, it's going to hold up and stay put. I'm putting this resin completely across the entire surface. I'm clear coating it. So I'm taking my time. I've got my nitrile gloves on, and I'm being careful not to get the resin in contact with my skin. just working it into place and being very careful that I'm going completely over that edge. The last thing I want to do is find out that I missed a couple of spots. So taking my time, but loving the turntable. And let's get those bubbles popped. And then what I want to do is I'm going to add some more of the clear resin right in the middle of this canvas. The total quantity of resin that I batched up is 14 ounces. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. And I put this big pool of clear in the middle because I'm going to let the other colors float through that. So here we've got the colors. This is the Pearl-X Reflex Violet. It's one of my favorite purples. And we're going to just pour that and use that banding wheel to turn the canvas. Keep that nice stream of color going in there. So that works nicely to turn. And then we'll bring in there it is. This is the FlowArt resin pigment from the Epoxy resin store. It's their red, and you can see it very closely matches the red spray paint background. Again, just using that banding wheel that's under there to turn. And then the last color that I'm using, this is the Stormy Night. This is by Art Tree Creations. And this one, I didn't get it too dark. I wanted a little bit of transparency. And actually laying that color on top of the red, it really went quite dark on me. It does have a transparent quality to it, but the color just doesn't stay to that teal shade that I was hoping it would hold. The background of the red is countering that, so let's just place a little bit more of the red. There we go. Now the pigments from the Epoxy resin store, these FlowArt pigments, they're nice because they're coming in primary and secondary colors, so you can actually mix your own custom colors with them. So if you need a pink, you can use the red and the white and do a nice blend. But in this case, I was going with a really nice candy apple red in this color, so straight out of the box works. Let's heat that up to pop any bubbles that I've reintroduced onto the canvas. And you can see there's not a lot of movement. Again, it's because it's a very thick resin, so it's staying in place very nicely. Now I'm going to zoom in here so that you can see I don't have any extra tip on the end of my heat gun. So I'm just blowing it on a medium blow. I don't want to go too much. And I'm just starting at the center. I'm using that banding wheel to turn the canvas. And I'm going to keep blowing through the layers of the color, pushing the red that I had at the center over top of that purple, and then blowing that reflex purple further out. Now we're going to move that Stormy Night across. And you can see how the Stormy Night really looks black over top of that resin, or that red background. So just working across, trying to get the colors to go over and move out towards the edge, because remember I poured that deep clear puddle in the middle, and that's going to let the pigments float and move across from the center out. So the banding wheel is very handy. I'm liking how easy it is to work in the same direction, which was important for me on this piece. Sorry about the reflection overhead. You can see why this is called super gloss. But it's looking pretty good. Keep working that. And back into the center to add just a little bit more of the purple there. I do love purple. It's a really beautiful over top of that red. I'm very pleased with that one. And get a little bit more of the dark and the red here for balance. I've been working the resin for about 20 minutes now. This has a work time of about 30 minutes, but you can see how I'm getting a little smoke when I'm using my torch on there and the heat gun. So that tells me that I'm just about at the end of my time on working the resin to try to get the effects. So you want to be careful, watch for that. You can see I have my full face respirator on. I highly recommend doing that, especially when you're working resin like we do, trying to make these effects pop out. I also have my window open and a fan in the room drawing any of the vapors and fumes out of the room. So all good things to keep in mind. Also, another good safety tip is to have a fire extinguisher handy. It can happen. I've heard it happen to people. So this is, and you can see just how that's smoking. So let's wrap this up and cover it up for the next day. All right, let's get the camera off the tripod and get in closer. You always want to inspect your canvas before you put it to bed for an overnight cure. Look for any cat hair, which happens a lot at my house, sometimes dog hair, and occasionally my hair. But anyway, here's some of the results from the pigments going into this piece. So let's get it covered up and we will see you in the morning. Looking pretty good. Notice how thick it is over those edges. Just what I wanted. All right, it's the next day. It's been about 18 hours since I worked on the first layer. So now I have a batch of resin made up. Again, it's the Super Gloss from the Epoxy resin store because it's a really nice thick resin. So I'm just starting in the middle just like I did yesterday. And I'm going to spread a clear coat of the resin across the canvas. So first I'm using the popsicle stick, working that around, making sure that I'm not missing any areas. And then we're going to add a little bit more, because I want that thick puddle down in there. I grabbed my notched, it's just a plastic tool. I believe I got it from Art Resin when I ordered some of their resin a long time ago. So it's got a really nice notched sides to it, and I just use that to make sure I evenly coat the surface of the resin. Again, it's only 5 ounces that I've batched up for this second layer on here, so I'm being kind of skimpy. A lot of people ask me, well, how do you know how much resin to use? Honestly, it's kind of that I just do this a lot, so you learn about how much you need. Don't get me wrong, there's been times when I've had to hurry up and make a little bit more resin because I was short, but you kind of get used to it. So I'm just moving that resin carefully over the edge, same as yesterday. Want to make sure that I have a nice coating of clear resin completely on this canvas. So take my time. You can see there's a lot of bubbles introduced from using that notched trowel, and that's okay because we're going to get the torch out and we'll pop those bubbles. We want to get those out of there before we start adding the color, because that could actually affect what's going to happen. Okay, pop those bubbles with that torch. Love doing that. And that's going to help the resin to level out nicely when you heat it up like that. So you can see that's quite a bit of heat going on there, and there's no smoke coming off of that resin. That's because it's still at a very viable stage. Now I've mixed up some more color, very small amounts. Again, the FlowArt red This is the Art Tree Creations, what color is this one? This is the aqua, and the other is the yellow, the FlowArt yellow. So we're going to start by putting some red on here. I decided that the first layer was just a little too dark and I wanted to liven it up. So coming back in with these other colors over top and putting them into the clear is going to add another layer. We'll get some nice layering over top of that first. Hopefully the cells will open up and we'll be able to get little peekaboo spots in there. So I'm just going to pour some colors of little small puddles on here. And again, the FlowArt pigments from the Epoxy resin store are very intense, so a tiny little bit goes a long way. You can see in these are the little mouthwash cups, and they're quite small, so the quantities are really small in there. Just enough to add some interest. Let's get some of that yellow in here. You can see I'm putting the colors next to one another because this is the layer that's going to move, so I want to have them interact with each other. So just no rhyme or reason to it. Can't decide where to put the yellow. Should I do it there, here? Okay, let's put it there. What can I say? I said no rhyme or reason. There isn't any. I'm just doing whatever I feel like doing. So let those spread out just a little bit. And I'm going to get my heat gun. And again, it's on that banding wheel so I can turn the canvas to the position I want and come in with the heat gun. This is on a medium setting. I'm not using a lot of forced air. So it's just medium setting, blowing gently, pushing those pigments across the canvas. Now you can see this time I'm blowing into the middle. Yesterday, everything started at the center and went out. And then we'll just hit it with a quick flash with that torch, and that will stretch those cells out, create some nice lacing. I'll zoom in and I'll show you again, pushing with the heat gun. That blows it and stretches the pigment out. And then you give it a blast with your torch. A couple of quick pops on the trigger. And that's what spreads that out and gets that nice lacing that we all love so much in resin. All right, and turn and work in a different area. You can see because I push it in and because again it wants to flow to the outer edges where it can flow off of the canvas. That's why I'm blowing in today. I want to keep that pigment up on top, work these areas out, and get some nice effects. Working with both the heat gun and the torch. And there you go. Very nice. Now we're starting to get some smoke already. But it's lacing out very nicely. Let's see what we can do with these little puddles of the red, yellow, and aqua. Get them to interact with one another. There you go. Now I'm liking already how this next layer has added just a little bit more interest. When you're working in abstracts, you want to make sure that you have some focal points in your abstract. So if you didn't see them the first time around, that's what's nice about the resin. You can always do another layer. You can put the clear on like I just did there, which is going to thin that out or let that purple below come popping up. And we'll work these colors until we're happy with them. Getting that smoke coming off the top, so starting to watch my time. There was a little flame, a little too much heat there. But the lacing is really popping out nicely. Yep, a lot of smoke on that one. Please make sure that you do use safety precautions, protect yourself. Get a real good mask. I'll put a link in the description box to all the products that I've used today. I highly recommend using a full face respirator. Your eyes can get the smoke in them and that would not be good. And you definitely don't want to inhale the fumes and the smoke when you're working with resin in this way. So you can see the resin is moving much more slow. And I'm getting a lot more smoke. So I'm almost time to quit here. And we'll zoom in one more time. And you can see how I'm getting, I don't even know what you would call the look on those edges, but they're not, you know, like fading out. So that's because, again, working on this piece, the resin is just about at its end of life for me to fiddle with it. So it gets those scalloped edges, I guess, is what we'll call it. When you're towards the end of working with your resin, that's what's going to happen. So if you want to go for that, look for it at the end of your time. So again, with this resin, it's about the 30-40 minutes, and that's where I'm at this point. So you can see it's not like blowing off and across, but I like the effect. It's different from the rest of it. So I'm kind of working on that, using the colors to create the interest. And you can see that the 5 ounces that I made up for this top layer is going a long way. I'm getting a lot of working time and a lot of different effects. Hit it with that torch. A lot of smoke, trying to stretch it out. There, the yellow came up through the red there. Yep. And these are really quick bursts so that I don't make a scorching spot in the resin. This is my top layer. I'm not going to come back and do another one, so the last thing I want to do is use so much heat that I get what I call an orange peel look to the surface of the resin. So now I'm done working on the top. I have a lot of drips that came around to the edges yesterday, and now I'm going back with a popsicle stick and I'm trying to clean them up as best I can so that I have only a little bit of work for sanding off those drip edges tomorrow. Just going around cleaning up with a popsicle stick to get those scrapes off of there. While I'm doing that, again, I'm looking carefully on the surface of my canvas to make sure that there's no dust or cat hair trapped in that top layer. I want to get a really nice, pretty layer. So we'll get that finished up. We'll cover it up with the drop cloth, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right, everything is cured and looking so pretty on here. Redemption. I just loved working on this project. Having the banding wheel to move the canvas worked really well. I was able to start in the center and below my pigments outward, and then when I did the second layer, I was again able to turn the canvas with ease and move those pigments towards the middle. The Epoxy Resin Store's Super Gloss Epoxy worked great for getting a nice thick edge around this convex canvas. Come back next time and we'll see you here on Moonkusser Art.